History is not there for you to like or dislike. It is there for you to learn from it. And if it offends you, even better, because then you're less likely to repeat it. It's not yours to erase. It belongs to us all. In this series, we take a look at North American cities which we speculate were not built by European colonists nor by the Native Americans. Evidence to support the notion that they were originally Tartarian is presented in episodes 1 and 2, so please watch those first as context and backstory are important here. Episodes 1 and 2 are linked in the description and provide the historical accounts to substantiate the following claim. Arzareth, or the land where the lost 10 tribes of Israel went, is inside of Tartaria and right next to the Bering Strait. Once the lost 10 tribes, or the Tartarians, crossed the Bering Strait, they populated America and built cities here. In 1492, Freemasons were kicked out of Spain, and Christopher Columbus brought 3 boats of the most wealthy ones to America, and when they arrived, they found not only Native Americans, but also a civilized population of Tartarians who had built magnificent cities, and this is why Columbus identified America as Arzareth. Let's take a look at the Tartarian city of Chicago. The city of Chicago. Let's start off at the beginning. Well, we're not this far back. I'm talking about the beginning of Chicago, which starts circa 1780. So 1780, we got European settlers coming in on horse and buggy with a horse and wagon with a gun and probably fighting off a few Indians. Incorporated as a town in 1833, a city in 1837. So, it was a town in 1833. It was a city 1837. Is Chicago the ancient mythical Chilaga, a place that appeared on maps more than 200 years before the city was founded? That's right, Chilaga or Chicago was on maps. Here it is, 1589, and they either mapped it incorrectly or the Great Lakes were not there at the time, but you could see there is Chilago. I mean, it's where you would find Chicago. We have Virginia, Florida, Mexico, Cuba, Jamaica, but Chilago here on the map. Here's another one, 1592, and Chilaga. And definitely right in the area where Chicago is. On this map, it's a little bit different. It's looks like they've added a Ho Chilaga, and here Ho Chilaga, another one. There's a city here. I'm not sure if the red city is Mocafa, but there's definitely the Chilaga here as well. Chilaga is a legendary mythical place that kept cropping up on early maps. Looks like we'd have to check the dates on these because this one said 1596, but we could see right here it's a 1520. Looks like 1526, and so not that many years after Christopher Columbus was in America. And on this map, here we have Chilaga. So it's evident that Chicago has been a city for a very long time, since 1500s. So when Wikipedia says Chicago was settled circa 1780, that is settled by the European settlers, and according to official history. However, it doesn't take, but a couple minutes to find out that Chicago's been a city. You can see the cities detonated by the red dots here. Chicago's been a city for a very long time. Fast forward to 1893, and this is what Chicago looks like, which really surprises me because I was expecting in 1893 to find Chicago looking something more along the lines of this. And sure enough, this is what we find in Chicago in 1893. Beautiful architecture, beautiful statues and fountains. And I'm thinking Chicago should be looking like this. Obviously, I was wrong about that. They had the ability to do much better architecture, as we can see right here. This is the Machinery Hall at the 1893 Chicago World Fair, or the International Columbian Exposition. It's funny this Christopher Columbus guy keeps coming up. All this to celebrate Christopher Columbus. But the one thing that really struck me on this particular image is the sheer size of the building. And I looked at it and said, you know, what building have I ever seen in my life that is this big? That's Walmart doesn't come close, Costco doesn't come close, and we're going to have to go up to something like the Tesla car factory or the Boeing factory up in Seattle, which are the biggest buildings on Earth. In fact, that building was so big, I thought I'd check, and here on the Wikipedia page for World Columbian Exposition, we can see that the great buildings, and there were 14 great buildings, and just one of them, the Manufacturers and Liberal Arts Building. If this building was standing today, it would rank second in volume and third in footprint on the list of the largest buildings in the world, with 8.5 million square meters. And we can see the list of largest buildings. Number 1, the Boeing factory in Everett, Washington, 13.3. Number 2, over in France with a 5.6. So this building with a 8.5 million cubic meters would be quite a ways ahead of second place, and it would be right here in the second largest building in the world. But there's one big difference. That is, we could see the part of the building right here with a little clearer picture, and you could see that it's carved with all this art up here. Every single square inch of this building has some kind of magnificent art and architecture and statues. And you can see it's covered head to toe in just beautiful art and architecture. Not only that, it's the second biggest building in the world. So I check out the Boeing factory, you know, it's number 1, and no offense, it's a cool building. But if we're to compare architecture here, this thing is more bland than a tofu hot dog. The only artistic element to the building is these printed off pictures of airplanes, which, you know, no offense, Boeing, it's a cool building. But if we're to compare it to something like this, it doesn't stand a chance. And I was shocked to learn that in 1893 they pulled off such an amazing piece of architecture. But I was wrong. They, like we seen earlier, they built like 13 of these things. Here's another one. This is the agricultural building, the fisheries building. This looks like a castle. I mean, if you didn't tell me this was in Chicago, I would expect there to be a moat over here, and the thing was over in, you know, England. And these were just supposed to be for the fair. So when it was over, they burned them down to the ground and destroyed it. Because, hey, the fair's over. We don't need them anymore. Let's just light the whole thing on fire and destroy it all because the fair's over. This is the report of the president of the board of directors of the World Columbian Exposition. So the people who were in charge of burning it to the ground, and so that this was what was left of it. Let's see, who's in charge? The report of the president, DeWitt C. Krieger, chairman, Grand Master of Masons of Illinois. What a shocking surprise. With an authorized capital of $5 million, and the money is now placed in credit of our Grand Lodge, and every dollar is in our treasury, in the Masons' treasury, aka the Federal Reserve. But we could see a bird's eye view of the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, 1893, or the city of Chilaga. The Tartarian city of Chilaga is the truth of what it is. Here are the Columbus boats. Of course, they're celebrating Christopher Columbus here. And the Columbian Fountain, a piece of artwork dedicated to the great Christopher Columbus, even though it doesn't have anything to do with Christopher Columbus whatsoever. Another great building, the Electricity Building here, and placed at the main entrance a heroic statue of Benjamin Franklin. So, you know, they did make a couple statues. The Great Basin looking at the great city, United States Government Building. This is absolutely the city of Chilaga as it's been marked on the map since 1500. All right, well, let's learn a little bit about the architecture and who built this, because it looks like the city of Chilaga to me. So the World's Columbian Exposition covered 690 acres and had 200 new buildings. Oh, so these are new buildings that are built just for the fair. They're built by Root and Burnham. And Root mysteriously dies as soon as he starts building this, but Burnham is a great architect who just happens to have built the Masonic Temple building in Chicago. Great, so let's learn a little bit about the architecture. Since many of the buildings of the fair were intended to be temporary, they were removed after the fair because much of the fairgrounds was destroyed in a fire. Almost all of the fair structures were designed to be temporary. Of the more than 200 buildings erected for the fair, the only two which still stand are the Palace of Fine Arts and a World Congress Auxiliary Building. Here's a picture of the Palace of Fine Arts in current-day Chicago. I've actually been there. Not when I knew it was a Tartarian building. I need to go back now and take a look at it with a whole new set of eyes. But you can see here there is the statues with the circles and the dome up top. And here it is right here at the 1893 fair, south entrance of the art building. Dome up top, statues with the circles. There's a nice statue right here, and that's obviously missing. We can see that it's no longer there, but the rest of this looks pretty intact. So I'm wondering how they built these things, because it looked like stone. They look like stone to me. You can see here even the it looks like it's weathered. Looks like this obelisk. Interesting obelisk, Washington Monument. But anyways, we got an obelisk here, and it looks like it's weathered. Looks like it's been there quite a while. And over here looks like stone. So my initial reaction was, hey, it's stone. But once again, common sense out the window. They weren't made of stone, but a mixture of plaster, cement, and jute fiber called staff. And architecture critics said that they're just decorated sheds covered with stucco. White stucco. So we got White City made out of white stucco, and we whitewashed it with a group known as the White Rabbits. I mean, who's running this operation here? For peace sake, guys. Kind of funny how they whitewashed Chilaga. It's interesting. Okay, so just to make sure I got this straight before I keep going, these are just decorated sheds made out of stucco. And of all the fair structures, they were designed to be temporary. 200 of them were to be temporary, and only 2 of them, like this one, they built out of stone, so it would still be up 150 years later, looking exactly like it did back then. Okay, here we have the Columbian Exposition album from 1893, thanks to Rand McNally. And here we have the administration building. Pretty nice for a pretty nice decorated shed. United States Government Building. A street in White City. The Columbian Fountain. We have a bronze or gold or some kind of a metal statue here. We know it's metal from other pictures. And just look at the number of statues up here. There's so many statues, you just can't count them. Okay, I'm giving them credit for this one. The Statue of Columbus. They obviously have sculptors and have sculpted some things. Here's the Women's Building, and this surely resembles a temporary fair building. Here's the Illinois Building, and I agree with the critics. This thing, nothing better than a decorated shed. If I was Illinois, I would be upset. Here's the Machinery Hall, and we've seen this one before, but again, this thing is probably bigger than anything I've ever seen. Second to the Boeing factory in Seattle. The Horticultural Building. And it looks like, glass up here, so that part's surely not plaster. Agricultural Building. Yeah, guys, I mean, come on. If this was on my property, I would be throwing a fit. Get the decorated shed off my property and burn it down. Piece of junk. Come on, look at this thing. The Columbian Fountain. Why keep that around when you can burn the thing to the ground? And that's the logic of a Mason. Here we got the Southeast across the lagoon. Shed City, if I've ever seen one. the central portion and the main entrance of the horticultural building. And here we got a statue of the bowl. Indiana building, and I mean, I don't know why these guys are up here on the second floor. Would you go on the second floor of a junkie shed? I mean, that's dangerous. It's about to collapse at any second. They're going to fall down to their death. I mean, could you imagine the guys going up here? Not even safe. The whole tower would probably just fall to the ground. That's the type of junky architecture they're doing at the World Fair, and I can't believe that they're just going to do it endlessly, and not take a minute to say, hey, maybe we should build something nice that's still going to be around in 150 years. A stucco bridge? I'm not even going to walk on this thing. It's probably going to collapse at any moment. Look at the weak part here. With just the stucco and jute fiber staff, I mean, this thing's bound to collapse at any minute. Here we got the fisheries building. If you turn your head to a 90-degree angle, I don't even think it's fit for a fish. Here we are celebrating the Christopher Columbus boats. This one's a nice view. You can just see how big the city is. I mean, this is the city of Chilaga. The transportation building. The fisheries building. A southern view here. A model of the gun they used to kill off the Tartarians when they... I'm not sure. I haven't looked into that one enough. But it sure is an interesting big gun. And here's a nice view of the fountain where you'd see the horses. The New York State temporary shed. The cart horse group. And nice statue, but also a great view of the stunning city in the background. Here's the mining building if you turn your head. And the funny thing on these ones is they never, other than the word mining, there's nothing that has to do with the art or the architecture that has anything to do with mining. And the same on the other ones, like the electricity building. You know, it's just like women, and it doesn't depict anything that has to do with electricity. This one is mining, and I think I even see a staff of Hermes. So I'm not sure how that's associated with mining. Once again, here's the art building, which is still standing and looks almost the same. You can see the clear difference that this one is definitely made of stone. And, ones like this, not a chance. This thing, you can tell this thing's going to fall down at any moment. Same thing with all of these. I mean, they just look like these temporary sheds, like they say. It's not worth keeping for sure. Burn them down. But this one, this is made out of stone. You can tell right now this thing's going to be standing for 200 years. Main entrance to the agricultural building. And I can't see real good, but overall there's not a whole lot going on with agricultural on any of that stuff. And same thing with the horticulture building. Except this guy here, who's holding, he looks like a European settler, and she does too. But the rest of these are completely different. Over here you have all these little kids that don't really line up. And it's quite funny. The 1892 and 93 in the horticulture look like they're carved in after the fact. Here we got the Pennsylvania shed and the decoration of the fisheries building. And just take a look at the amount of detail. I mean, you've got little statues carved up here. These little cubes. You would think it's all hand carved, intricate details. Even if they used a cast to make some of this stuff, it's still. I mean, look at the amount of detail on the pillars. It's fascinating. I've never seen anything like it. With basements. Here's the window. And that's the obvious thing to do when you're building a temporary fair shed is, build a basement down there, because why not? Here we got the Colorado State shed. And I think some of these statues, like this one over here, the Quadriga, are just mind-blowing. Nebraska building, Montana building, Louisiana building, the Swedish building, the Manufacturers and Liberal Arts building. You can see how big this thing is. It's crazy. This is the building that's would be the second biggest building in the world today. But no, They burned it down because it's just a useless, stinking shed. And here we got the ruins of Yucatan. And this is one instance where I may believe that it is actually true. It's made out of staff by means of paper mache molds taken from the original ruins, it says. The main building. And this is the southeastern corner of the fairgrounds. No buildings really of much of significance. The corrupt building, but you could see that this. I mean, these aren't temporary fair buildings. This is looking like a castle over here, and it looks like Chilaga. This is Chilaga, the ancient Tartarian city. Here we have the mines and mining building under the central dome of the horticultural building, which looks awesome inside. And there's also some kind of a crystal cave here. Here's another one of those temporary buildings. Another look at the women's building. The South Pond, and other than ridiculous architecture over here and everywhere, you could also see a cool train that's they got a house here and they've wrapped a train all the way around the thing. Anyway, it's kind of a nice view. A steamboat over here, it looks like. And when you look at the inside of these buildings, that's when you know for sure these things are just junky fair buildings that are decorated on the outside. The Brazilian building, the Connecticut building. I mean, what did they... How many slaves did they have? Or what did they... They built all this in 3 years. It took them from 1890 to 1893. The Wisconsin building. The Virginia building. The peristyle, as you can see from the interior and exterior, a noble work of beauty. Thanks to the talented designer, Mason Atwood, one of the greatest architects in the world. The ornate decoration on the ceiling and the detail on the columns is clearly brought out. You can see all the detail up here and all this nice intricate detail on the columns. It goes for 234 feet. If that's not the description of a temporary fair building, I don't know what is. Here we have the South Canal with the obelisk. And on something like this, you can see it actually does talk about Christopher Columbus. The discovery of the continent by Christopher Columbus, the nation. They must have just planed this thing down flat and carved in, whatever they wanted to carve. The obelisk, situated at the southern end of the South Canal, is an exact reproduction of Cleopatra's Needle. Oh, it's now standing in Central Park, New York. So they moved it from Chilaga to New York. Okay, so there's one more item that was not built out of stucco. The Michigan building. The Marine Cafe. And I'm not sure which one it is, but either one, it's, definitely looks like the cafe building they put up for the fair. Sprawling city of stucco. None of it's stone. Oh, wait, no. One of them's stone. One of them's stone. That's right. Here's the Delaware State Building and the Venezuela collection of stucco. I thought this was pretty funny. Blind man's buff. Pretty interesting thing to say. Blind man's buff. You've got the blind man with his eyes covered up. You can't see what's going on. And it charmed millions who passed by that way. The inside of the terminal shed. And it's funny, these things are supposed to have just been built. And so you're looking at the ladders here, it's got to be from the builders. The only person who's going to get up here is going to be somebody who's working on the thing. So part of the building crew, part of the maintenance crew. So how did they build this architecture? Well, apparently they just used ladders like this, and they kind of climbed around on ladders. And luckily OSHA wasn't around, because OSHA would be throwing a fit. But yeah, they just kind of climb around on ladders, build the whole thing, and get it done in 3 years, and they're ready for the fair. You can see that on this one too. There's, you got up here, you got this ladder. I mean, good luck to the guy who has to go climb these things, because that you're not going to get me to go up this ladder. I definitely would have to be tied in up top, and then walk across the ledge over here and climb up this ladder. I mean, it's ridiculous. And they're saying, again, this is 1893. They just got done building this. This is like leftovers from the construction crew, or the maintenance crew, but it's one and the same at this point. It's 1893. These guys, they built it with these little ladders like this? You tell me they got up here on his ladder and did all this artwork? Makes no sense. And to do the statues up here, they just send a guy up with his chisel and his hammer, and he climbs up the ladder and just. Oh wait, no, he had a bucket of stucco. He just walked up with his bucket of stucco and made some quick statues up there. They're made out of paper mache, so they're gonna blow away. That's why they gotta anchor them on here with a little piece of iron. Geez, we got so many buildings. We run out of states now. It's okay. Guatemala, here you go, Guatemala. You get a shed too. British, why not? Everyone gets a building. Let's get one for North Korea too. Where's North Korea's? And the Indians? Yeah, you guys could screw off into here. That's what you guys get. And here's your boat, by the way. Oh, but if you're from Haiti, here you go. You get the Supreme Stucco. Eastern facade of the Machinery Hall. And we got the Moose over here. The Music Hall. The Choral Hall. Because the music's not enough, we also going to need one for chorus. Bird's eye view of the Great Basin. The Great Stucco Basin. The main western entrance of the terminal station. The Moorish Palace. I mean, these guys, they got bored at 150 buildings? They're like, just keep going? Look at these guys. They're up here on top of the building. You could just see everywhere you go with this place, you have... What? Look at these statues. All right, let's count all the statues at the fair, and we're going to have to add this up. They're probably going to... What are they making? 25 statues a day? I can imagine the conversation going on here. Look at that stucco piece of junk shed over there. This guy, we ought to just burn it down, forget it. Interior of the music hall. The building of India. The northern facade of the French government building with a ship coming out. More statues, lion statues. And the Ferris Wheel. And this is the first Ferris wheel that was ever built. The first Ferris wheel, the 1893, 264 feet tall, was built for the World Columbian Exposition. The original Ferris wheel, sometimes referred to as the Chicago Wheel, opened in 1893, and this thing was massive. These cars on it, you can see all the people inside. They're almost the size of apartments. It was 264 feet high, which is almost one of the tallest Ferris wheels in the world to this day. And it could carry a capacity of 2,160 people. I'm not sure, we get 1995 one here. Here's the 1893 one. That's like saying the Wright brothers doing the mathematics and physics of figuring out how to fly. And instead of building this, they're like, no, bro, scratch that. Let's just go ahead and build a Boeing C-17 as the first plane. Because that's what they did with the Ferris wheel. They built a massive behemoth of a Ferris wheel with apartments for cars and has a capacity of 2,160 people. Invented in 1893. Which leads me to believe that in addition to all of this architecture, they also found the Ferris wheel and did not originally build it. The other possible invention is the skyscraper. The guy who builds the Chicago Fair, not only did he build the Masonic Temple building in Chicago, and they built the Montauk building, which is claimed that is the first building to ever be called a skyscraper. Is the skyscraper another achievement of reverse engineering architecture? And this fella didn't know how to do it until he arrived in Chilaga, studied the architecture, and said, hey, I think I can reproduce that, and went on to build the Montauk Building and the Freemasons Temple, found a Ferris wheel, reverse engineered it, say, hey, I think we can build that. Built this massive city of stucco with intricate detail all over the thing to an extent that we nowadays have no ability or capacity to do, but gets it done. Being awarded the contract in 1890 and having it done at 1893, making one excuse after the next. The credit for completing these buildings in the remarkably short time is by public acclaim accorded to Chief Freemason Burnham. They didn't start shaping the earth until the spring of 1891. An army of earthworkers made such rapid progress. And in June, it was ready for foundation. So by the time they put the foundation in, 2 years to build all this. I don't know how to interpret this exactly, but it says the designs were not secured by competitions, many reasons being against the adaptation of such a method. The time was short and the work was great. Harmony and effort must be had of men possessing genius and ability. Direct selection was therefore the only safe method. In other words, nobody who really came in and bid on these things were allowed to. Only Freemason Burnham directly selected the people who were supposed to quote-unquote build all of this. The power plant, located in the machinery hall, is expected to supply energy equal to 30,000 horsepower. The shafting in the various buildings is driven by electricity conducted through underground passages or subways. I mean, it's a great idea to put subways in at the fair. I mean, if you're putting up a bunch of temporary fair buildings made out of stucco, what other way to get electricity to them than to make subways to go from point A to point B? The credit of completing these buildings in a remarkably short time is accorded to Chief Burnham. I don't believe it for a second. That sounds like a nonsense Masonic story. Report of the President, Board of Directors of World Columbian Exposition. Who do we have right here? DeWitt C. Krieger, Grand Master of Masons of Illinois and late President of the Masonic Board of Relief in Chicago. The mayor was assassinated at the end of the fair.